live. Hi, Don.
Right.
How are you today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm doing two workshops tomorrow that I actually didn't know about till I guess 2, 3 days ago because I thought I'd be in Europe at this point, but with
Right.
family stuff, I'm parked in New York for a bit. Um, Hoping to book flights soon to cross the pond, but we'll see. So Eric Walters said, to approach me and said, "Hey, do you want to co-facilitate with me on Thursday to a group called STEM Teachers NYC?" So they're a group of mainly public schools, but some independents as well,
Mhm.
that get together once a month. It's like a professional development organization, I guess, sort of like the way NICES is and all of these others that we know, you and I, and have presented many times at many of their conferences.
Is it STEM Teachers NYC? That's the name of it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put the link up here. It is they did
Mm,
the giant room workshop that I went to a couple of springs ago with you guys. They were
exactly.
one of
In
the
Chelsea, right?
yeah.
Um, at that makerspace. Yeah, that's them, Lucy. They're pretty prolific. Um, I did a PD with them recently. It was called a salon on social, what's the word? Philanthropy, right?
Yeah.
And the joke in the office is if the word salon is used in anything, I'm going to show up. That's it. Um, because I go to these salons in MoMA that you and I think you've been at ones with us, right? And
Yeah.
Andrew Gardner, Linda Vasu, and Karen Blumberg, all ex-School of Columbia colleagues. We go to a salon in MoMA, which is run by Paolo Antonelli. She's their design curator and head of research, and they're absolutely amazing. Like she'll pick a topic like refrigeration, and then she'll line up a series of academics and artists, and they'll talk about the work they do in that space. So it's very, very meta and really pushes your thinking out there. And so when I saw the STEM teaching about we're running a salon on social whatever, I signed up. And it was about like social, I'm losing the word, not social mentorship, but it was about getting people interested in the environment. So anyway, it started in a park off the BQE. For those people that don't live in New York, the BQE is this highway that cuts through Brooklyn. It was put up by Moses, and completely dissected. It's absolutely hideous, and I don't drive. So, but anyway, what they're trying to do in Brooklyn, it's same as Manhattan. They've all around Manhattan, they've built up a green area. So, like on the edges of the water, there's parks and cycle lanes and dog places and recreational stuff to green New York. And they're trying to do a similar thing in Brooklyn, around the Brooklyn coast. Okay. And it happens to cut by the BQE. So it started there in one of the gardens that the Parks Committee in New York put up. And then we all walked as a group over to the Brooklyn Navy Yard, where there's a lot of startups. And their Pratt School of Art and Design actually have their sort of tech innovation fashion school there. And so we went to their sort of startup space and did another workshop there. Anyway, that's some background on STEM Teaching New York. It's not just always science, it's actually a lot of other things. But they're a pretty interesting group. They're always running PDs. Yadana is the woman that runs it. I mean, it's just this constant PDs all the time. Sort of like you, I guess, in a way, the way you're prolific with pushing stuff out, Anyway.
I think they're a little bit more organized than I am, but I wish there was. I think what's exciting about New York, and I'm feeling, I don't know when the last time I was there. Was it last summer? No, it might have been the summer before. It may have been 2 years.
Wow.
I have to get like my New York fix periodically. So when I come to visit, you and Karen always take me around. Like we've done gallery hopping, we've gone to the High Line, we've gone to, interesting kind of offbeat museums that I probably wouldn't go to normally. And so it feels like it's going to New York periodically is kind of like an inspiration, a jolt of inspiration to take back to other pieces of my work. And so I miss it. And I know that there's there's speaking of these green spaces, isn't there like an island, like a little island off of Manhattan somewhere that's a newish park? Maybe it's connected somehow.
Yeah, it's up at 14th Street on the west, just off the West Side Highway. And I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's very Gaudi-esque. It is attached to the mainland, the
Okay.
island of Manhattan. But maybe if we Google it right now, it's got an odd name. I don't know if you want to try Googling park.
I'll find it. Let's see if I can find it. I would love to see that. I'm trying to think what else. There was something else that occurred to me that I wanted to see there. There's a play I want to see. I want to see Audra McDonald in Gypsy. Her Tony performance was so powerful. Okay, park in New York on water. It's not pier. It's not. Is it Little Island?
Yes, that's it, Little Island. And okay. I should remember that because there's also Little Island in Cork, where I'm from, and it's a big part of the pharmaceutical hub, Little Island. So that's that's the one.
I'll put the link up here for people to see. Okay, so there's.
It's pretty interesting park, very designed, I would say, almost over-designed, speaking as a designer, but very quite Gaudi-esque. They're like these tubes or flowers that pop up out of the water, a stem, and then it opens out. I don't know if you're seeing pictures of it there, Lucy.
Yeah, let me see if I can, here I can share the screen. The nice thing about StreamYard is you can share a
there they are.
Chrome tab. Yeah. It does
it
does look quite busy.
Yeah, I think as well, like they have to control the crowds going on. You can only put so many people on. When I went when it opened, they were just letting people in dribs and drabs. I don't know if it's calmed down, but then if you go further up the river, Google have put a park up on top of one of their buildings that's open to the public.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's not in the Google building; it's in some other building, because Google have their new building right down near me in Hudson Square. But Google have put a park on top of this sort of warehouse building. But the idea of that is that's so that you can commercialize the building in some way. You have, if you're doing this in New York, you have to open up some to the public. So this is a way for developers to get around a law about it.
So do they have a new building? They used to be, when I was involved with Google stuff, they were in the old Port Authority building. Are they still in that building? That's where WebMD was too, right?
Yeah. No, they took over that from WebMD, and WebMD left, came down to Hudson Street, and now WebMD is in New Jersey, I believe. No, Google, if you Google this one, Google's new building, you'll see they took over. It's an old yard, part of that High Line thingy, but to do with industrial New York back when, and it's called Saint something or other. And they've built their new headquarters there. Oh. It's on, I want to say it's on Washington Street, and like, I can't quite see it here from where I am at the guest room, but because I live in the area, but I can't see the Google building. I'm not high enough up in the building. If I was on a higher up floor, I know I could see it from here.
Is it at St. John's Terminal?
That's it, St. John's Terminal.
Okay, so here's an article on it. Let me bring this up. It looks cool. Hang on a second.
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing, Lucy, about the St. John's Terminal architects are Cook Fox, which, as we know, were the Marymount new campus where I work a few days a week in East Harlem. It's the same architects whom I worked with on the program design of Marymount's new campus. Maybe we'll pull that up as well, Lucy, so people can see.
Yeah, let's do that. So here's I see the Fox name on here.
Yeah, Cook Fox. And you'll see some similarities, very sort of green. They're big into this sort of bio type thing. But and so Lucy's going to pull up Marymount School of New York, which were the same architects. I mentioned that because I worked with them. And of course, if anyone wants to come visit and see the latest in what a new school that's built from the ground up, we're more than happy to take you around there. Eric Walters, who's the director of STEAM, and I can do that.
Is
Because I worked tirelessly on this building for a long time. I know every inch of it.
what's the name of the architect? Cook Fox?
Yeah, Cook Fox. They were so great to work with. I had a ball.
Here's their website with a new school.
Yeah, there's the new camp there. So that's on East 97th, between Lex and Park. For New Yorkers, for anyone else outside, it's in East Harlem, very close to the 6th train. But anyone that wants to see a new, hate to use the word state-of-the-art campus, please feel free to come visit us. We really want to take people around. Lucy, you still have to come,
I know.
right?
I can see it. What is on the roof? It looks like it's a green roof. And what are you guys growing here?
Yeah, that's herbs for the cafeteria.
Sorry, I'm sneezing.
Yeah, and what's up there as well, there's an outside sort of sink and counter area. And I asked if I could teach some sort of food design class up there. Would be great to do something like that, and integrate science and design in some way.
It looks like this is up here in the upper left-hand corner. Their pictures on their website are kind of, I don't know. I think they could have done, here's an article about it, but they could have done, and here's Fast Company mentioning Marymount.
Oh, there's the chapel, the Nordic inspired chapel.
Wow, that's beautiful. So now this is beautiful. Like the pictures on the website are not that on Cook Fox's. Oh, but well, this isn't. Okay, so here is the full article. Okay.
Yeah, there's the roof.
Wow. Okay, I can't see the rest of the article, but at least we got a view of it. Oh, neat. Yeah, I definitely need to come see this. The arms race. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting project to work on, working on the program design of building a campus from up to scratch, from scratch up. As in, like I said, it's like 10 stories high, 3 stories under, I want to say 150,000 square feet. I think something like that is the full square footage. It's got like a regulation size gym. It's got a theater that seats 350, 360. It's got a cafe that's the full floor, which can actually accommodate the whole school. One of my favorite floors, floor 5. And it's got an iconic design and engineering space on the ground floor as you go in.
So do you think that schools are ready to innovate again post-COVID?
I think, I don't know, Lucy, because, like the focus, I've taken my focus away from faculty and put it onto students. And that was because, like.
Hang on. Sorry, I'm checking. I'm checking on to make sure it's streaming in places. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. So like I've taken away my focus on working with faculty to work with students. I felt with all the pushback of bringing in innovation that to focus on students who are willing and interested. And so what I've done there with Eric Walters is developed a really strong elective program in the creative technology department, so things like digital fabrication, a few different computer sciences, design thinking, entrepreneurship was what I teach. And our latest one, product engineering design, where we've partnered with Dyson and helping the kids understand product, bringing product to market and manufacturing side. So I feel, and these are all electives in the high school. So my focus really is on that. And we're just developing new courses as much as we can. Like I'd love to do something on food design. But are schools ready? Yeah, I mean, I think they are. But I think we've had much more success with focusing on students than on adults who a lot of the time just aren't interested in bringing in innovations to the classroom. There will be, a small percentage, and there's a small percent of the teachers at Marymount do projects, you know what I mean? But I often think projects are also tag-ons. Oh, it's like 2 weeks before vacation, let's do a project type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Buzz off. Type of, you know what I mean? It's like, really, like, just because it's like, it's seen as light and fun and, that type of.
And it's kind of dead time in the curriculum, typically, or 2 weeks before the end of the school year, and kids are bouncing off the walls, and you want to do something, you feel like you have a little bit more freedom at that point to deviate from what you normally teach, instead of making project-based learning kind of core to what you do. Speaking of which, I ran into my friend Chris Walsh at ISD, ASCD, and he works for PBL Works. I think you've met him before. He was involved with Google stuff early on with like me, and in the last, I don't know, during COVID, he went back working in a girls' Catholic school in, I think, Walnut Creek, California, and did some really interesting things. We should interview him sometime. And then he transitioned into a role he also worked for New Tech High, which is also a project-based network of schools at one point, the flagship schools in Napa. And that's where they have PBL World, I think, still. Anyway, he now works for PBL Works, which used to be BIE, Buck Institute. And they have a new platform that they're pushing out with tried and true projects. I mean, this is probably for schools that are not necessarily creating their own curriculum, but schools that are looking to do project-based learning and don't have the time, expertise, bandwidth to create their own. So there's a whole database that they have that schools can purchase with projects based on subject, grade level, whatever, length of time, that sort of thing. So that was something new that I saw at ISD that looks promising, because most of the materials coming from PBL Works are pretty good in terms of their public free stuff. So I imagine the paid for platform will be helpful to schools that aren't necessarily as sophisticated as you are in your design of things. And then, where was I looking? Oh, yesterday I was looking at something online that was talking about designing learning experiences rather than creating curriculum. Like, when are we going to make that shift? And I wish I can remember where I saw it, but that, you and I have been talking about that for a long time. We want to see teachers be designers of learning experiences because they know best, and it's a way to be creative and authentic in your teaching. And there's so much of this of automating and canned kind of focus on things for teachers, when if we want to keep teachers motivated and excited and doing deep projects, they should be designers of the learning experiences.
Yeah, for sure. But that's, like, I mean, to convince teachers that they are designers and using the 5 tenets of UX when they are lesson planning: attract, enter, engage, exit, extend. So there's 5 components to the experience, and we need to consider each one. And a few teachers that I've brought that to in Marymount love it. And they're like, oh my God, this has changed everything that I'm designing for my students, but there's 5 parts, and you could maybe don't have to focus on all 5 all the time. A great user experience will, but let's focus on the exit or the attract. Why are you taking this class? It's my first question for all kids. They have to is like, tell me why you're taking this course and what you think you'll get out of it. And that's also my mainstay with any workshop I'll run.
Yeah.
Why did you come tomorrow to take this developing creative mindset? Where do you think it will go? But it's
putting the onus on the learner too, the responsibility for being an active part of the learning process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, and that's a very simple strategy that you can design with. I don't think it's that much extra work.
Yeah.
I mean, I do it a little bit different. I usually, when I design for a class, I tell people I have 3 versions of me that enter the room, and depending on where the students are, how hyped, how not, I will go in, one of those 3 directions. And sometimes there's a 4th invented on the fly from something the students said. So, I feel you have to be very responsive to students, but what we see is that people are hung onto the curriculum. They have to, I have to finish that chapter this obsession with like content. Um,
Agreed.
but 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 it's a hard one to change people's mindset about, that the value is still seeing in content, that content is king.
Because that's what we're testing in the
Yes.
standardized testing in the AP test or whatever.
Yeah. But Lucy, go back to your question about are schools ready to innovate? What I think is the problem with high schools is that they're designed in general to get kids into college, and once you hit junior year, 11th grade, I mean, the focus on college visits, it's really insane. And all of the colleges that the kids want to apply for, and that's really what it's about. So you're designing for the college process, and the learning in a way is secondary. Like that to me, if that's the problem, if that is the problem with high schools and why you can't be creative a lot of the time, except in the elective strand. If it's a main strand in a core subject, English, mathematics, some of the sciences, it's not that you can't create and be innovative, but a lot of people just don't want to take the risk,
Yeah, they're risk averse, definitely. I especially in high stakes schools. So, one of the things that I'm the president of the Alumni Association at my college now, which means nothing, but I'm excited to do it because it's helping me really zero in on an institution and where they're going and learn more about it. It's been 35 years since I attended this school, and Henry is now going to it. So it's been fun to kind of see what they're up to and support their efforts. And what is interesting about Beloit College is it is a mid-tier liberal arts school in the Midwest. It's traditionally had a lot of students from all over the world. 20% of the students are international. But we also, when I was there, at least, we had a lot of students from the East Coast and the West Coast. It wasn't just a Midwest thing. But the core probably is Midwestern students. So I felt like it was a pretty sophisticated place in terms of the offerings when I was there. What they're running into is that there is a crunch coming in terms of, I don't know if we're there yet or not, and the birth rate went down at a certain point. And so colleges are competing for less students. And I think, Harvard, Yale, whatever are going to be fine because those are competitive schools, brand names, people want that. I don't think they're going to be looking for students. It's going to be the small liberal arts school that is struggling financially because of enrollment that is going to have a hard time attracting students unless they do something differently. I think that's kind of the conclusion that Beloit has gotten to. And they have divided into 5 different schools within the college. And I can show you the website. I can't remember all of them. One is healthcare, another one's related to global studies. Another one's related to business and entrepreneurship. They've always been really strong with the business and entrepreneurship. You talked to, we interviewed Brian Morello from there a couple of years ago, if you remember. But there are 5 schools, and they're also partnering with local institutions. So Black Hawk Technical College, which is a trade school in Janesville, has some reciprocal stuff going on. I think Black Hawk students can live in Beloit's dorms. They have a nursing program going with Edgewood College, which is just starting, and Edgewood is based in Madison, which is close to Beloit. So they're looking for local partners. They are trying to make their curriculum as experiential as possible, because the days of going to a liberal arts college and trying different things and seeing what you like and seeing what sticks it's not over, but it needs to be reimagined. And so people have this perception of liberal arts schools that you're just trying things out and you're finding yourself, and that's not enough in this day and age where you have to come out of school. It seems like most college kids need to have an internship. They need to have experience before they get their experience in order to get a job. And, it's really shifted, this and maybe this is what we were imagining 20 years ago when we were talking about 21st century skills and that sort of thing. But I don't know if a lot of other schools are moving in the direction that Beloit is doing. I'm really impressed with what they're doing.
Yeah, but let's look at what Northeastern did. Like this is exactly what they did. They repositioned themselves, which is why now it's like a really sought after school to get
What
into.
school is this?
Northeastern.
In Boston?
Yeah.
Really?
And it's gone way up the charts. Yeah. And like super high, like I want to say 80, 90,000 a year. I had a friend whose kid got in there, but in the end, because of the cost, but like they were explaining the program to me and it was just incredible. So they have definitely, like, that was a no-name college for a while. Now it's like a real hot name. Yeah.
Wow. I should look at that. Yeah.
You should. Yeah. And I don't know what other, I just know that is because I know it's become really popular with students applying from Marymount at least, and Dwight. But if you look, yeah, there's a lot of like outside stuff with it, internships, abroad semesters, which a lot of people do. But I want to say I think one of our students went there and they did their first semester, not even there, it was somewhere else. You know what I mean? So like you started out in Milan or I don't know where, and then
their website's beautiful. So look at this. So the first thing is, this is what they're emphasizing, their values, global experience. I had no idea. I mean, and not that a website says everything about a school, but this is beautiful. I like how I think being true to your values is important, and like communicating what that's about, and that their website does a nice job with it. So they also have other campuses, it looks like.
Yeah, see, so that's the thing. They've like partnered, and so there's all of this away stuff, as opposed to just on your campus. But they definitely have, like, they did more than a rebrand. I would call this a repositioning of, what their values are and mission.
Yeah.
And I feel like just like to me, if I was 17 and wanted to go to college, I would be running here.
Yeah, absolutely. So now they also have something on a new political landscape. And that's what this is. So it's talking about the executive orders and impact on teaching and research.
Mm-hmm.
This is smart. This is smart positioning, like how they're responding to it. What the president of the college is saying at the university. This seems like a really proactive thing to be doing. Wow. This is what Beloit is up to. Let me get their tab up too. I'm going to share this tab instead. This is their different schools. Where are the schools? I just saw them a minute ago. Oh, here it is. Explore schools. So there's School of Business, School of Environment and Sustainability, Global and Public Service, Health Sciences, and Media and the Arts. And I want to say that the School of Business is probably the most established, and the Health Sciences is just kicking off right now. And they're going to be, I guess, additional schools, I guess. I don't know. But, I think that they're trying to position themselves as you can come here and customize your path of learning. The other thing that's interesting too is that, a lot of small schools have closed, including my mother's college in upstate New York, which was called Wells College, a really small all women's school. It closed maybe a year ago. Beloit put out a notice saying, "Hey, Wells College students, come finish your degree at Beloit." I don't know if anybody from upstate New York went to Wisconsin, but I do know that kind of outreach has been successful for Beloit in terms of another school that unfortunately had to close that had a big environmental program, Northland College, and that's up near, I think, Lake Superior. And so Beloit, so their whole hockey team, that hasn't graduated is coming to Beloit, and Beloit's starting a hockey team with Northland students, and they'll finish their degree there and grow the program. So, being agile and forward thinking in this day and age for any educational institution, I think is really important in order to stay relevant. The other thing,
yeah, but Lucy, I'm thinking now, speaking of closures, I mean, the latest independent school, which I believe was over 60 years, that just is not going to open its doors in the fall, is Manhattan Country Day.
Really?
On the Upper West Side. I mean, there's an interesting school. Again, a bunch of people from school at Columbia University worked there. Andrew Gardner did, David Lebson, science teacher. But their big thing is they have a farm in upstate New York, so there's a lot of experiential learning happening up there. But yeah, it's closing its doors. And let's go backwards. Either a year or two ago, the Blue School in downtown Manhattan closed. That was the one started by the Blue Men Group. If you remember that theater company on Lafayette Street in Astor Place. And then prior to that, like, you had the Alt School disappeared, Portfolio School. And the reason I'm sort of aware of all of this is that in my TC, Teachers College Columbia graduate class that I teach in design thinking, I take students out on what I call voyages. So we take them out in the field to have an experiential experience, places like the TEDx studios, which are right down here in Soho. But one of the things, along with other experiences I designed for them outside, was getting them to a startup school. So I was always bringing my students to like a school that was 1 or 2 years old. And right now, what's the latest startup school in New York is Avenues. And Avenues is 11 years old.
It's thriving, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's thriving. But we've had all of these other smaller startup schools. The other school that's just closing was the Workshop School in Brooklyn, a middle school in Brooklyn, is shutting this year. So interesting closures in all of these schools. I felt like 10 years ago, we had a lot of buzz with startup schools. But of course, the ones that seem to be successful are the charters, right? They keep expanding.
Or the micro schools seem to be a thing.
Yes.
And I don't know very much about that. What's the one group? There was a presentation at ISTE on it that I wanted to go to, but I didn't make it. It's one of my favorite blogs. I'm blanking on the name. They did a presentation on micro schools, and I don't see micro schools in my corner of the world. In a fairly affluent, well-educated area of the Chicago suburbs. I don't see parents clamoring for another option. I see them wanting their kids to play their traditional game and get ahead, and buy into that whole college process and that you're talking about and that sort of thing. And so I wonder how. I don't think that traditional parents like this are going to let go of what their vision of success is in order to let their student learn in the way that they learn best or they're curious about. I think people are worried about achievement, making sure you have a job after school, a high paying job, hopefully, instead of thinking about it more holistically. It's really hard to get out of that trap if that's the community you're living in, I think.
Yeah, but Lucy, you being a parent, like, how do you feel about this with your 2 kids?
We were not the kind of parents that we did not do a lot of tutoring. That's big around here. Paying big bucks for a tutor to get a kid through a course or to get them more advanced in a course. My kids it wasn't appealing to them. They were not particularly cooperative about that kind of thing. The other thing is that there's probably one major college person at the high school they went to who's been there a gazillion years. We met with him. It was hard to get an appointment, and it was not very personalized or helpful. The kind of college support stuff that they did was the kid had to really be partaking in it. the kid, which is understandable for high school, but you want kids to be independent. But they put out lists of what colleges are coming to campus to the campus to high school campus to talk about their colleges, and then it's up to the kid to get a pass to go to the presentation or whatever. That wasn't my kid. My kids were not into that. They needed more handholding. A lot of people hire coaches, some sort of college admissions coach type person. That seems to be the norm now.
Yeah.
We did not do that. We took our kids to see different colleges and we talked about it with them. We bought books. And I don't know if they were ready to go to school, particularly with the pandemic. The second one, I think, had a harder time because he was a junior when the pandemic hit and was really impacted. So it's taken some adjustment. One is done with school. The other one is in the midst of school. And it's taking him a little bit longer because I think of the trauma from COVID. But one of the things I liked about the last school I worked at was that they really provided concierge services, for lack of a better term, around the college process. And if we could only do this, if we could only scale this for other kids and families, the class probably is like 60 kids in the rising junior class at my last school, maybe. And they would take that spring, they would take an optional trip to look at colleges with those students. The guidance counselors would go with them and they would go to a particular region or something. And it was an optional thing. Then they did a 2-week boot camp for rising seniors right after school got out with workshops on how to write an essay and people coming in from like Northwestern to talk about admissions and different things like that. And it was really a tailored, intimate experience. And it took the onus off the parents of being instead of having to nag your kid about doing the essay or whatever, the kid was getting it done during this time.
Yeah, that's classic independent school. That's
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And I think that's incredibly valuable. I would have, if I had been working there and I think Henry was a sophomore when I started working there, so it was a little too late for him to go there. I think he would have benefited from that personalized attention. And the bottom line is that we don't do that for, maybe I think first generation kids, college students in certain areas get some more support. There's more organizations that do that kind of coaching and that sort of thing to help kids get through it. But even, middle of the road kids need that support. And how do you do it? And it's really hard as a parent to your opinion on it when the kid really wants some independence in the decision-making part of this.
Yeah, but like it's at Marymount School in New York, where I work part-time and teach the design stuff. I make it known to all the kids that I teach. I said, if you need any help with helping you understand colleges in Ireland or the UK, come to me. I can tell you about it. I've been through that education system, both in Ireland and in England. And I don't know if it sort of pisses the college counselors off, but I feel I have the expertise in these spaces. I mean, like a kid said, well, I'm thinking of going to Durham. Oh, okay, I can tell you about Durham. Durham, amazing top university in the UK, but ends up with a lot of kids that didn't get into Oxford or Cambridge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's going to be a trend of students doing that. I've seen a lot of friends' kids go to, what's the place in Scotland that Prince William?
That's St. Andrews, which has now a bigger American population of students than locals or than UK students, I should say.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and St. Andrews, I think it's because it's designed around an American university system and not a UK or Irish one. They're all quite different. Well, UK and Ireland universities tend to be pretty similar, but St. Andrews is not. And it built that mold for itself to attract American students, and it is way on the map now. Again, that was not a university that was on the map when I was applying for colleges in the 80s. You know what I mean? It was there, but it wasn't. Now it's up there.
So all these things also boil down to equity. And one of the things that stood out to me, and I'm trying to find the document. There was an article in New America's website about the cuts. While I was at ISTE, the Trump administration announced that they're going to cut $6 billion worth of education funding to public schools. And some people are saying, well, why are we not talking about this? Which is totally legitimate. And I posted an article somewhere, and I'm trying to, if I go to my Facebook page where I posted it, I'm going to get feedback from our stream here. Where else did I put it? It's pretty incredible. Let's see, maybe I put it on Twitter. And so it has like the top hundreds districts that are going to be impacted, and most of them are rural or large urban. Here it is. And I'll share my screen. And I just, it may not directly impact us, but the whole access to education and to resources there's going to be much more of a divide than there already is regarding access to things. So this article, and I'll put the link in the chat as well, is really important reading for anyone to understand what's going on. So so here is the charts. So Chicago Public Schools, it shows you the representative, so you can call your representative and let them know what you think. But there's also, let me see if I can get to the bottom here and move over. You can see how much money, the percentage of students of color. Chicago Public Schools is almost 90% students of color. The poverty rate is pretty high at 24%. And the total amount of funding at risk is $14 million. Here's a district in Florida that's $37 million. You can sort this spreadsheet basically, and there's 5 pages of schools. So this is to come at this point and not know until now, like all of a sudden, this money has been allocated for next year or planned on. So I think we're going to see even more risks. So on top of this, schools had extra money, thankfully from ESSER from COVID money, and that ended last year. And so they probably were going to be facing cuts and some program changes due to that. And now it's even worse. And then it's by congressional district. And you can see that there are Republican and Democrat districts that are at risk here too. It's just, anyway, I think this is one of the things to pay attention to. It's not an independent school issue, but it's going to, I don't know. It's just the divide between people is going to be even worse. And I'll put let me see if I can get I'll make a short link for this and put it on the screen. What else has been catching your attention lately? Any articles or things that have been that you've been reading, or anything that you recommend people looking at? Any sources of information?
Well, I was just looking at something before we got online, which was AI being used in the pharmaceutical industry for the design of new drugs, and how this has moved way along. It must have been with Google. And since I was a drug designer, because I'm a chemist in my past, I'm just fascinated by the fact that AI is now helping us design drugs, pharmaceuticals. So there's just, that's really it. It's like, I know it sounds hackneyed, but it's AI this, AI that, AI the other thing, everywhere, every single industry.
Yeah, so that's another hot topic, right? So AI was all over ISTE. Magic School had a bus with a lighted advertisement driving around town they had PETA, those PED bikes with their advertising on it. School AI had a school bus with their marketing information on it. Everybody had something AI. And I mean, that's no surprise that, last year there was tons and this year there was tons as well. What I find, and I haven't tried some of these products yet fully, so that's in disclosure. I'm a big fan of using AI for my own personal use for planning events and coming up with ideas and getting, having an assistant coach me through certain things. I think I'm using it pretty robustly. I can do that with having a $20 a month subscription to ChatGPT. I don't need some other platform to do it. And I don't understand why we have to dumb this down for teachers when they could just, if they knew how to write the right query, the right prompt, they could do whatever they wanted with it. Why do they need this wrapper around it? I think it's probably, there's maybe, if you're using one of these school district-wide products, there's probably some vetting of the content that's available to make it more safe, I'm assuming. And I should probably look into it more, but it feels like kind of the creative potential for this is missing. And Gary Stager, our friend Gary, has been very critical on LinkedIn of this. Like, you don't need an AI tool to create quizzes and all this. Yes, it makes life easier. You could just, anyway, I think that there needs to be, that was one observation. I don't know why all this is necessary when you could just use the actual chatbot itself. The other thing is, another teacher wrote in ISTE's community about how she would use it with, third grade students. She sees how she could use it for productivity, but she's like, why would I use it with third graders? What is the catch? And I think that's a completely legitimate question. I don't know if students need to learn basic skills. I sound like I'm like 90 years old. In order to be able to and develop their critical thinking skills in order to use AI later as fully as possible. They also need to understand what AI is, how it's part of their lives, how it works. So my question for you is, what are your thoughts on AI in schools? What is Marymount doing with preparing kids to either use AI or understand it from a computer science kind of perspective? Any ideas on this?
Well, the first thing is, like, they're all using it, all the students. And I've had students say to me, you know what, I have no idea how I was able to deal with this workload before chat. Wow. Stuff like that. So yeah, that's what they said. I have no idea how I would never have got through high school without chat, because like this work has been piled on them. And a lot of them have paid accounts, like you said, the $20 account. But before we get into more, what are the school doing? I took a class with Jeremy Utley, whom you know from Stanford, on AI. And it was an interesting class. It was 15 minutes per day. So he sent you an email in the morning and you spend 15 minutes, practicing your AI stuff. But his first thing, and I believe Eric has since taken that model, and the workshop that we're running tomorrow for STEM Teaching New York, one of the workshops we're running tomorrow is AI and design thinking. I talk a little bit more about that. But what Jeremy said was that if you are using the free chat GPT, that's like what the body of knowledge of a 9th grader or 10th grader would know. If you're using the paid version, the $20, then that's really maybe the capabilities of someone that has a doctorate, right? This is how you can, right? And now what I want to say is, what if you get the $200 one? Subscription.
I did for a month.
And did you find that was like really amazing and transformative?
I did it because it had the deep search capabilities at the time now, which has now has gone down to the $20 level. Not necessarily, but I love Claude. I think Claude is actually the director of the library where I work is a big Claude fan. So I decided to dig into that. And the the responses seem to be, I get more interaction from Claude. Like they ask for follow-up questions. They ask for questions after I've put in my prompt to further refine it right off the bat. And
Yeah.
And it just seems more, if it can be, more thoughtful or more.
Yeah. And there is, I did post an article somewhere. This is really annoying if there's an audience out there because I can't, it probably on Twitter, but there was, I don't know if it was the New York Times did a great one of the comparison of all and which was better used for what content area. And that's apparently what it,
Yes. Yeah. Having a chart like that is useful.
Yeah. And I know a lot of educators swear by Claude in the sort of in the language, well, English, that are teaching English and teaching history. So whatever you want to call those subject areas. Humanities, I guess. And that Claude is really good for that. I use Gemini just because it's part of the Google suite.
Right.
But I did recommend to the new head of school at Marymount that all of her and all of her administrators should get paid accounts, and they should be using that to manage their data in school.
Oh, yeah.
Know?
Oh, yeah.
And see how you, pardon?
How could you not? And you know, I'm teaching a basic one for adults at our library, and I think it blows their mind. You know, most of the people that come are probably on the older end of the spectrum, and we get a lot of retirees who are engaging in tech classes, and it's mind-boggling, you know, and you know, we start out doing some really basic things. We generate we use Padlet to introduce ourselves and generate a picture. It's kind of a fun thing. And anyway, it's worked out. It's every time I teach it, I kind of get better at explaining things and refining things and telling them some of the, you know, the pitfalls. We have a lecture coming up by somebody who's going to be discussing the environmental impact. So I'm looking forward. Hopefully I can go to that because I really know very little about the environmental impact other than that it takes a lot of energy and water and whatever to keep these server farms going.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I do think instead of banning it, we should be using it. Just to give you an example, how I used it at the end of the year in my design thinking class, I think I had like a final design challenge for them, and you know, they could pick various, but one of them might have been design an app to make me a better researcher, right? And what I have them do is they start with the how might we questions because they're really good to start a brainstorming session. So they come up with 5 how might we questions. Then I say go to chat and let's see what chat comes up with, and let's compare those two. Which is better? Are chats too broad? Are they too narrow? Or are they just right? How might we question? So we compare, and then I have them ideate alone based on those how might we's, and then ideate with chat. And you know, I think what we need to be doing is helping the students understand, well, what is this stuff good at? Where can it help me?
And where is it not? And where is it not? And what are, like, you know, for example, creating images is highly problematic. And you know, how do you get around that in terms of like spelling and weirdness popping up? So I think the first thing is for people, you know, if you would ask me like 2 years ago anything about AI, I would have been like, what? Who cares? That's not going to be a big thing. I seriously would have been really dismissive of it. And, you know, I've been dipping my toe in more and more, and I would never call myself an expert on any of this, but I feel like it's, you know, I guess the bottom line for me is you still have to be a critical thinker. You still have to be able to articulate what you're trying to do and accomplish. And you have to have some background knowledge of what you're trying to work on as well. So it's not, to me, the power isn't having it write a paper for you. It is helping you scaffold it and you still do the work. You know, like, give me an outline so I can get started with this, or here's my outline, help me polish it. Or, you know, giving me some tools to structure things a little bit better is important. I don't know how college professors are proceeding with this. But by the way, there's a Substack that is OpenAI's education people. And they also are posting to LinkedIn a lot with some case studies from different, K-12 and higher ed. And so I find that's I think they have some really interesting use cases for using ChatGPT.
But Lucy, I don't know if you saw that piece in the New York Magazine a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but people were
cheating. But then there was another piece that was a student suing a professor at some university. I mean, I don't think it was Northeastern, but that's what's coming into my head. But because the teacher was using it, the student was now suing the teacher for using it and not being honest about what.
Tell me I can't use it when you're using it.
Exactly. It was funny. That was like,
wow. Henry had a teacher at Beloit who had them create a research paper in a chatbot, and then they had to go back and fact check it. They kind of reverse engineered it, which I thought was interesting. So, and I'm kind of curious. I purposely did not go to a ton of AI sessions at ISTE. I wasn't particularly interested in hearing. I figure I can figure this stuff out on my own. I guess now, in hindsight, the policies and the strategies and the way that educators are engineering lessons, learning experiences, using this, but also so that students actually are doing the work. I think it's a design problem if everybody's cheating using it. And it's also an ethics thing, or it's a lack of building awareness in students about genuine work and how it's beneficial to them versus relying on a chatbot to do everything for you.
Yeah, and if you're going to pile 5-6 hours homework on kids, which is sort of what goes on, as our friend Gary calls it, is it the second shift, so now you go home and now you have another 5-6 hours. Well, of course they're going to use ChatGPT to help them do that. Like what are you thinking? And can you design homework experiences that they just can't throw into ChatGPT? And what might that be? That's thinking we have to do it, but you can't give them those assignments that maybe you've been given for the last 10 years or 20 years. It has to change. But that sort of piggybacks into another area of a thing I learned recently of teachers not giving tests back, not letting kids take the test home. So they're making them take a test, then they go over it, but then they take the test back, right? And they take the test back is why? Because, they'll apparently, like, over the years, the tests get copied and then the next class underneath gets it. So they know, what I mean? This silliness of and this is how you're dealing with it. I mean, why would you not have a new test? Have the kids design the test. When I was teaching this content, I never had a problem with tests because each kid submitted a question for me, and I compiled the questions and then they all did it.
Oh, I love that.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, and they're tough on themselves. You know what I mean? It's like, and that empowers them, but we've got to start doing stuff like that. But I mean, I was doing this when I taught chemistry 20 something years ago, but people are still hoarding tests the same. I mean, it's so ridiculous, honestly. That's where my patience is done with the many educators, that this is their sort of behavior. It's like they're battling with the students, and battling with parents, then partnering with them. Do you know what I mean? They're not your enemy. We're working together with this. But I think there's a lot of that with educators that do go to battle with students. And this great foreign language teacher at Marymount was said to me recently, she said, it's amazing how many educators take stuff personally. And if you start to take stuff personally with students, I mean, seriously, you're an adult. This is a student. They're not fully developed. They're learning. Why would you take anything personal? But it happens, right? I have no idea, what is wrong with people. But it's like, seriously, you need to dry up and stop and really understand where these kids are and what experience they've had that you haven't, because you weren't brought up with this. You were not brought up with, if you're my age, you weren't brought up with social media or your age, right? We would
Yeah.
have brought up AI, but we have to figure out what to do with it,
I,
Um,
yeah, I think the most, and for students, they're not going to look back in 20 years and say, "Oh, I had the best test from Mr. Buckley." Uh,
no,
necessarily, they're going to look back about at the relationships and the experiences they had and what stood out to them. Um, and
totally.
I was just saying this to so the Charter for Compassion, by the way, is having their youth conference again in the fall at the end of October, and they're accepting proposals. And the teacher, the innovation teacher at the great Lake Forest Country Day School, where I went to grade school, Greg McDonough, has submitted a proposal for his students, and they're going to be like, I think a kindergartner is going to be participating this year, and it's on service learning and how they approach it, and the kids are going to talk about the different projects that they've worked on, and that's what's going to, and my core memories of learning come from my years at that school. It's rooted in experiential learning and broadening kids' perspectives, and it's still going on to this day. So I can't wait for these little kids at this online conference to share what they're doing and with an authentic audience. And I they're little, but they still they have a voice, and they're perfectly capable of caring about the world and other people, and participating in some service learning, and so I was thinking a lot about how that school meant a lot to me in terms of, we went on a field trip to Brookfield Zoo and saw an antelope being autopsied, which is still stuck in my head. We traveled around Illinois, going to various historical sites in an RV for May Week. We went to Washington, D.C. We did, all these kinds of things. And I just wish that's what people is going to stick with people. It's how you make them feel, and how, I don't know, and what they're immersed in, and
For
focus on
sure.
that, and then you'll have the kids on board more when you do that. That
Yeah.
said, we had some kids in the library a couple weeks ago that were bringing. This is a new one. They're all on e-bikes around
Mhm.
here, and they brought their batteries in to charge.
No, that's a no-no, as we know. Exploding battery.
Yeah, and they're big. These bike batteries are gigantic. They're like a car
Yeah.
battery. And there's like 9 boys, crammed in a study room charging their stuff, and some of them had been kind of bothering another person, and my first reaction is, teacher voice, you can't do this kind of thing. And um I think that's the first reaction with young people, particularly when they're difficult. And instead of thinking about a more, I don't know, respectful approach to dealing with them. And I was reminded of how do I interact with young people in a way that helps them listen and learn, as opposed to ordering them around.
Yeah, no, but Lucy, going back to what do students remember from your class? So listen to this one. I got an email the other day from an alum
Yeah.
um, who has 2 kids. I taught her chemistry and physics when I moved to New York first. And now she has 2 kids, and the kids are both entering 2 schools in England, boarding
Yeah.
schools, boarding schools. And she was looking for a tutor, physics tutor. And she was brought back to me by another alum. Anyway, this alum wrote to me, who wants the tutoring for the kids, and said, "Oh my God," she said, "can I tell you what I remember?" She said, "I remember a day when it was snowing and people were late for class. And you were like at the top of the room, and what you said was, 'Where are those sugar cubes? Do they think they're going to melt in the snow or what?'" And she said, "I use this analogy with my kids every day so they build up rigor." Like, this is what she remembered, and had nothing to do with chemistry. or physics, and I don't care because most people don't give a damn about those things. You know what I mean? The 1% do. But like she said, like, so this was a memory that she carried with her and found use for it in bringing up her kids. I just thought it was hilarious, right?
Yeah, I love it. Well, on that note, maybe we should stop babbling. I think this live stream worked pretty well, and it should be. It's on my Facebook page, it's on LinkedIn, and it's on Substack. But let's keep chatting and finding ways to experiment, and maybe, you know, in August or September we can start actually doing a more formal thing and interview some people and have conversations like this. But I loved what you had to say today, Don. It was great. So I'm going to stop the stream, and then we can keep chatting once we're off camera.
Bye, everyone.